My name is Rachel Chen. And I was 28 the afternoon my best friend stood in front of our entire department and presented my business plan as her own. She used my charts, my projections, my 3 years of late nights and failed experiments. She used my language, my phrasing, my carefully chosen words. The only thing she changed was the name at the bottom. Her name was Megan. We've been friends since college, roommates sophomore year, inseparable through breakups and breakdowns and the kind of 20-something chaos that forges bonds you think will last forever. She was the first person I called when my mother got sick. I was the first person she called when her fiancé left her. We'd held each other's hair back, dried each other's tears, celebrated each other's small victories. She knew everything about me. She knew I'd been working on this idea for 3 years. She knew I'd quit my job to pursue it full-time. She knew I'd mortgaged my apartment, drained my savings, and slept on a friend's couch for 6 months to keep it alive. She knew every detail, every failure, every breakthrough. What she didn't know was that I'd already incorporated the company, that I'd already secured the angel investment, that I'd already hired the first 3 employees. She didn't know that the business she was presenting as her own had been legally mine for 18 months. But I knew, and I sat in that conference room with my hands folded on the table and my face perfectly still, and I watched her take credit for everything I'd built. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where we sit with the quiet betrayals that happen inside ordinary relationships, and with the steady people who walk out of them whole. I need you to understand how I got to that conference room. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who took notes, who stayed late, who fixed the problems nobody else wanted to touch. I worked in tech, a mid-sized company that built software for logistics companies. I was good at my job. Really good. But I wasn't loud about it. And in a world where loud gets noticed, quiet gets overlooked. Megan was the loud one. She was charismatic, confident, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately commanded attention. She was also smart, genuinely smart. And she had a gift for making people feel like they were the most important person in the room. That's why everyone loved her. That's why I loved her. When I first started working on the business idea, I told Megan about it over drinks. I was nervous, unsure, half convinced it would fail like everything else I'd tried. She listened with that intensity she had, the one that made you feel like your words were gold. "Rachel," she said, "this is genius. This could change everything." She asked if she could help. She asked if she could be involved. I said yes because I trusted her, because I believed in us, because I thought the success would be sweeter if we shared it. That was my first mistake. The next 3 years were a blur of prototypes and pitch decks and rejections. I worked every waking hour. Megan came to some of the meetings, offered suggestions, gave feedback. She was helpful in the way that friends are, supportive, encouraging, always on the sidelines. But she never did the heavy lifting. She never missed sleep. She never mortgaged anything. She never made the sacrifices. I didn't resent that at the time. I thought we were a team. I thought she was doing her part in her own way. I was the builder. She was the believer. That was the arrangement. That was the deal. Then I got the funding. I called Megan first. I told her the news. I expected screaming, jumping, champagne. What I got was silence. Then she said, "That's great, Rach." Really? But her voice was flat. Her voice was the kind of flat that means something has shifted. Something has cracked. Something you can't see, but you can feel. I didn't push. I should have pushed. 6 weeks later, I was laid off from my full-time job. Not because I'd done anything wrong, because the company was restructuring, and my department was being eliminated. 27 people, all of us with boxes and severance packages and nowhere to go. Megan was not laid off. Megan was kept. Megan was being considered for a senior position. I was happy for her. I was. I started working on my business full-time. I rented a small office, the kind with one window and a radiator that clanked. I hired 2 developers, both of them younger than me, both of them hungry. We worked 16-hour days. We built the prototype. We tested it. We rebuilt it. We tested it again. I asked her opinion. I trusted her, because that's what you do with your best friend. That's what you do when you've known someone for 15 years. You trust them. I was at a dinner party 3 weeks before the presentation. Megan was there too, charming the room, laughing at something someone said. I was in the kitchen, helping the hostess, when I overheard a conversation. "Did you hear about Megan's big project?" Someone said. "Apparently, she's been working on it for years. She's going to present it to the board next month." I froze. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to think. The person continued. "She says it's going to change everything. Something about logistics, I don't know. But the board is already excited. She's practically got the promotion in the bag." I walked out of that kitchen with a glass of wine in my hand, and a smile on my face that felt like it was painted on. I didn't confront Megan. I didn't accuse her. I just sat in the living room and watched her work the room and thought, I know what you're doing, and I know what I'm going to do about it. But I didn't know yet, not really. I only knew that something had broken between us, and I wasn't sure I could fix it. The morning of the presentation, Megan called me. She was nervous, she said. She needed my advice. She was pitching something to the board, something big, and she wanted to run it by me first. I told her I was busy. I told her I'd catch up with her later. She said okay. She didn't push. I'm still not sure if she was testing me, if she wanted to see if I'd recognize my own work, or if she genuinely believed that the idea had become hers. That's the thing about people like Megan. They're so good at believing their own stories that they forget where the stories came from. I showed up to the presentation 5 minutes late. I sat in the back, where nobody would notice me. The conference room was full. Board members, department heads, the CEO. Megan was at the front, poised and confident, her slides already on the screen. She started talking, and I heard my words, my research, my phrasing, the jokes I'd made in our late-night calls, the metaphors I'd used to explain complex concepts. All of it, verbatim, coming out of her mouth. The room was captivated. They were nodding. They were impressed. They were about to give her everything I'd worked for. She ended with a flourish, a summary slide that read, "A new paradigm in logistics, Megan Sullivan." Not Rachel Chen. Megan Sullivan. The room applauded. The CEO stood up and shook her hand. He said, "This is the most innovative thing I've seen in years." "Well done, Megan." She smiled. She looked around the room, and her eyes landed on me in the back. Recognition. Then she smiled again and moved on. I didn't stand up. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a chair. I sat there with my hands in my lap and my face perfectly still, and I watched my best friend become the hero of my story. But I had something she didn't have. I had a piece of paper in my bag, a certification of incorporation, a document that proved I'd founded the company, a document that proved every word she'd just spoken had been written by me. I waited until the room emptied. I waited until Megan was alone at the front, packing up her things. Then I walked up to her. I put my hand on the table. I looked at her with the calmest face I could manage. "Nice presentation," I said. She smiled. "I couldn't have done it without you." I smiled back. "That's the truth," I said. "You really couldn't have." Then I walked out. I didn't tell her. Not then. The board meeting was scheduled for the following week. Megan had been told the promotion was all but confirmed. She'd been told the company was ready to implement her groundbreaking solution. She'd been told to prepare for a new chapter in her career. I had a different plan. I reached out to the CEO, a man named David Kohler, through a mutual acquaintance. I told him I had something to show him. Something that would change his perspective on the presentation he'd just seen. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near the office. Off the record, he said. I brought my laptop. I brought the incorporation papers. I brought 3 years of emails, drafts, and project files. Timestamps that proved I'd been working on this idea long before Megan ever mentioned it. I showed him everything. David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Why didn't you come forward during the presentation?" "Because I wanted to see what she would do," I said. "Now I know." He nodded slowly. He didn't defend Megan. He didn't make excuses. He just said, "What do you want me to do about it?" I told him. I told him I didn't want Megan fired. I didn't want a scene. I wanted her to stand in front of the same board and admit publicly that the idea wasn't hers. And I wanted a seat at the table, not as an employee, as the partner I already was. David agreed. He said he'd set it up. That was the beginning of the end. The next week, Megan walked into the same conference room expecting a promotion. She walked out with nothing. But not because I destroyed her, because she destroyed herself. David called a special meeting. He said the company had new information about the proposal. He said the board needed to be made aware of some facts that had been omitted. He invited me to speak. I walked to the front of the room, the same room where Megan had stolen my work. I looked at her. She was pale. She knew what was coming. I said, "I'm Rachel Chun. I founded the company that developed the technology you saw last week. Megan was my friend. She knew everything about it. That she didn't build it. She didn't fund it. She didn't sacrifice for it." I showed the paperwork. I showed the timestamps. I showed the emails when Megan had asked me for advice on her project. The board was silent. Megan's face was a study in slow-motion collapse. I thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant, righteous. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad for the friendship I'd lost. Sad for the person she'd become. Sad for the version of us that used to stay up late eating takeout and dreaming about our futures. Megan didn't speak. She didn't defend herself. She just sat there frozen while the board discussed what to do. They didn't fire her. They asked her to resign. She did, quietly, 3 days later. That was 5 years ago. I haven't spoken to Megan since. She moved to another state, started a new career, got married. I know that because her mother still sends me Christmas cards. I don't know why. I don't send anything back. My company is successful now. We've grown from 3 employees to 40. We've got a second round of funding and a third in the pipeline. I'm not rich, not yet. But I'm comfortable. More importantly, I'm proud. I learned something from Megan that I never expected to learn. I learned that friendship isn't a guarantee of loyalty. It's a test. And sometimes people fail. I think about that conference room sometimes. I think about the moment she stood up there, using my words, taking my credit. I think about how I felt. The cold clarity. The certainty that I could destroy her if I wanted to. And I think about how I chose not to. Not because she didn't deserve it. She did. But because destroying her wouldn't have built anything. It would have just torn something down. And I'd spent too long building to waste my energy on tearing. It's in the silence that comes after. The silence where you keep building, keep growing, keep becoming the person they pretended to be. And that, I promise you, is worse than any screaming you could do. Drop a comment if you've ever had someone take credit for your work. Hit subscribe if you believe that the quiet ones are the ones you should watch out for. I'll see you in the next one.